right, you guys are tuned in to the Chappy and Bengals Podcast. Welcome back, guys. We're going to be reviewing Week 18 in the NFL. Sad tear going down my face because it's the end of the year for
playoffs,
my
baby.
Cincinnati Bengals.
Yes,
you're right.
You can cry about it.
It's playoffs. But before we get into that, my co-host here, Chappy, how we doing, man? You look fired up for playoffs, clearly.
We're doing it, man. Yeah. And
yeah.
You know what the best part about that is how excited I was for the fucking Sunday night game and how dog shit that turned out to be. I was like, no fucking way. I was like, This is everyone's betting overs. We talked about overs.
You called it,
too.
The
funniest joke was me going, this is going to be 10-6 at halftime. Ends up being 10-7. I was dying. I was like, well, if that's not getting us ready for the playoffs, I don't know what is. So
spot on. A nice letdown to end the season. Pretty
Absolutely.
wild. I'll say this. You know what? I don't know if you watched this game, but a couple of years ago, do you remember that final game of the season between the Raiders and the Chargers where it ended in a tie and it sent the Raiders to the playoffs?
I don't. I remember the storyline, but I didn't watch it.
It was probably one of the best finales to a season I've seen in a long time. I think they were both battling for, I think it was the division title or something. Not the title, but the next wild card spot. And then the Raiders, they went to overtime. It was just an absolute fire show. And the Raiders, all they had to do was get the tie in overtime, and they would have clinched, right? So then it all came down to like the end there. And it was probably one of the wildest endings you'll ever see. You should go back and watch the highlights from that.
I will.
It was crazy, but does not compare. This year was a bit of a letdown, like you said.
Oh, yeah.
But that'll be one of the last things we talk about. We got a lot going on. We saved this show because it's the start of the offseason for a lot of teams currently, and there has been a lot of coaching changes already that have happened. We want to talk about that stuff, not only the games, but the coaches that have been let go, some of the coaches that are still being retained, and the different headlines that go in with that. So we got a lot going on. So based on the first bit, I think we'll start with some of the coaching fires here. And the obvious first one here, I'll get your thoughts on kind of each one as we ding through here, Jeff. The first one being the Patriots, Jerod Mayo, fired. It seemed like immediately after that last game.
He took it like a man.
Talk about that. I want to get your thoughts on that one.
Honestly, I was dying. So if not for anything of the pettiness that is the NFL right now, you have Robert Kraft immediately firing the coach right immediately after they win the game, which takes away the first overall pick. I'm dying. I was saying, if not for anything but an absolute, what the fuck, you're done. You're not the coach for this. I thought that was so funny because obviously it derails the entire plan that, hey, we're going to take a bigger step forward than we are.
Yeah, we trust you. Go for it, man.
Go ahead and do it. You're the right one. You're Bill Belichick's replacement. We're going to make it happen for you.
We groomed you for this. Don't worry. We trust
You're ready.
You, man.
Linebackers love you. You're great, coach. Yeah, no, I was like, I was laughing. I was like, how petty is that? I know what happened with Seattle as well. And I just think it's, and I was just like, if not for just an owner getting fucked over on their ultimate plan, is then the coach just following through on that. And I don't know. I'm not shocked by it at all, given the circumstance. And obviously the Bills, I think that was Bills' payback pettiness for all the years to which New England shit on them. So I was just kind of chuckling back and saying, if not for just, hey, you know what? We could take a loss. Josh, he could take one snap, get off the field. We'll play our backups from there. Let's see what happens. And then what happens is they win and they lose their pick. I thought it was fucking funny.
It was pretty hilarious. There's a couple things I want to touch on with this, and I'm on your side with how that is. But the first thing being, you lost the pick. Oh, let me get focused here a little bit. You lost the first overall pick, but I also think I look at this draft and I'm just like, I don't think with this draft it matters necessarily for the first overall pick. They don't need a quarterback. I think the two teams that are at the top are going to be vying for a quarterback, and with them it's just like, I think they have so many places that need to be filled, right?
Yeah. It's like what that pick represents,
like you can trade
right?
Back and, all that stuff too. I get that. But I think Mayo knew he was on the way out.
Absolutely.
But then you put in a guy like Joe Milton, and this guy looks, I don't know. pretty damn good. Now you got guys inquiring about Joe Milton's availability, and it's just like, wait a second. Is this guy just like a step in and flash kind of guy? Is that what we're seeing from him? I don't really know. Yeah. But in a year and an offseason where there's going to be a lot of desperation for the quarterback position here, I don't blame teams reaching out after the performance that he put up there and knocking them out of that number one spot. But the Jerod Mayo thing, how do you expect a guy to succeed with a roster like that, right? Like, you just being set up for failure there?
It's kind of funny because then I heard all the narratives of like, it was, this is a good roster to inherit. And I was like, okay, I understand where you're coming from with Drake May's development and everything that was kind of happening there. But outside of that, I don't really see a lot of the upside. Like we called it early in the season that we didn't think this team was going to get 4.5 wins. They didn't, right? Just below. But at the end of the day, this team is not built to win right now. And when you go out and fire that guy, albeit that you're going to get a pretty decent player in the draft here, it's not gonna move the needle a whole bunch. Yeah. And so I was kind of like, you put your faith in this guy. If your result was anything more than 4.5, like Vegas proposed it to be, would you have still fired? Right? Like if it was 5 wins, is it different? Like this is where I look at what the situation is and what he, there was some talk at the end with New England fans. They were chanting "Fire Mayo" and that kind of stuff in the crowd. Mm-hmm. But like also, I think that's just from a long history of winning. And then you have this season, and I don't know what New England fans. Well, we do know what your buddy thought of what was going to happen with New England this season.
Shout out Jamal. Thanks
Shout
for
out Jamal.
That payout, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. But what it comes down to is like, what did you expect of this team to be? Did you expect it to be a 7-win team? And would you have not fired him then? So it's like, I don't understand the principle
what was your
of having
expectation, right?
4 wins be, oh, wow, we... what were you thinking? I just don't get that point of it. And then firing and have to find a new guy, much to your point of Zach Taylor, is, what are you going to replace that with? Because there's some options out there, but if there isn't a good enough option, then you stick with the culture that at least you're trying to build, I think. But it could be completely crap in New England right now, and we're only privy to certain information.
Well, I mean, like having a plan and being patient is all, fun and games before the season starts. But when you trot that out there and you're a sub 4-win team, and I think that can get pretty dry pretty fast, right? But at the same time, we talked about just the lack of patience in the league to begin with. I don't know how this guy was expected to be successful in this spot. I don't know how you can fire a guy for giving him that roster, a roster that was projected to be bottom 3. Like, this is what New England was projected to be.
We were making the jokes before the season even started about the Deadpool Wolverine or whatever. It's like, I don't think you guys are going to make it out of this. Like genuinely, it was what the season was projected to be. They were projected to be the worst, and they just barely missed that. So if you're thinking that this was going to be anything more than a development season for the team as a whole, I don't understand the fire. You hold out on that until you're absolutely sure you have the pieces in play, and then you move forward with the right direction of coaching. Like, I get not building a foundation if it's not the right one, but I just don't get the overall price to pay there from like what you have built. Or this, it was just a complete waste of a year then.
Yeah, I completely agree. And then beyond that, like, I think so the rumors I heard was, the whole Mike Vrabel association with them potentially wanting to slot Vrabel in as the head coach now, and how Vrabel going to interview for the Jets was a smokescreen to get Kraft to make this move so that they could hire him. But then the recent news that I heard was like there's ties between Vrabel and the Raiders now because, Tommy Boy over there scouting for the Raiders side of things, he's got ties with Vrabel too, so there's a bit of incentive with that. And from my perspective, like, we can segue into today's news, Antonio Pierce being fired as well. the Raiders position is wide open now as well. So now you look at this, Vrabel's got ties to both associations between Brady and then obviously the Patriots organization. You know, which job is more appealing to you?
Which job is more appealing?
What is more appealing
What
to
tire
you?
fire would you like to pick, sir?
Yeah, because, I mean, both of them, they're bottom feeders in their division, and their divisions are respectively fairly difficult because they both have kingpins in both of them with the Buffalo Bills, and then you also have the Chiefs in the other one. So I look at that. I personally would love to see Vrabel play their coach for the Raiders. I just want to see the Raiders get a good fucking coach. They have struggled to fill that position, and they've struggled so bad to find success with that organization. So for me, I really hope he goes over there because I think Vrabel's a good head coach. I think when he was in Tennessee, unfortunately with the trade they made with A.J. Brown, that one draft, and the management of some of the players there is really what led to the demise. Like he was the one seed with fucking Ryan Tannehill at the time. So like he had success, and I think it just got, obviously, that was worn out, and they had to let him go, and there's a lot of shit that went on with the GM there too, right? But you look at them, they're still a dumpster fire. Like they have the number one pick in the draft now. So I think Vrabel's going to be a great coach, and I hope he goes to the Raiders. But
just give him more than one season. I just like if you're not building your foundation, and like what, it's 2 4-win teams, right? Yeah. And they're in a situation with the picks, right? So it's like you just got to give time. Like, would you have fired Dan Campbell in his situation after his first season?
The perfect story, right?
Like so you got to, as much as we're talking about quarterbacks and development of your players, you got to be patient with that. Now, in your case with Cincinnati, maybe too patient with some of the results in the last little bit here.
We'll talk about that later.
But that's a whole other thing we'll get into. But yeah, I just think you got to build a culture. Now, if you don't agree with that culture, and maybe Kraft didn't, right, then move on, right? And clearly the Raiders culture has been absolutely trash over the last few seasons, and we know that. We've seen that. We joked about that. Cigars after a fucking win, and you're an absolute nobody in the division. Like, you gotta change that in order to be winners in this fucking league. And yeah, it is what it is. Like,
yeah, when I look at the Raiders, I think that the quick takes I had here, and I talk about this with Val all the time because she's a Raiders fan, but
sorry, Val.
Yeah, sorry, Val. The sad thing was the opportunity they had when they brought in Devontae Adams was to bring in Aaron Rodgers at the same time. Like, they needed a quarterback there. I thought they whiffed on that, and the Josh McDaniels hiring there was it just shaking my head. Like, he didn't have success as a head coach before. You see all this crap with the Patriots. All the coaches that came out of them, Vrabel is the one that actually had success, as opposed to everybody else who fell on their face. I just thought that was a garbage hire. And then what he did, with the Derek Carr and the Devontae Adams situation, splitting them up, and just the handling of all of that, it's just been nonsense. And then the not hiring Bisaccia after his season where he filled in for Gruden, and then now doing the Antonio Pierce hiring just to make up for that. It has not
been a good few years.
They've just been.
I was like, they're just listing off
right?
Just 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah,
it's brutal.
And it's just drama, and it's like, it feels like it's just a fucking like Real Housewives episode. Like, what the fuck is going on? And like, obviously the move is a part of that too.
Yeah, moving
like,
to Vegas as well.
So much shit that's happened in this organization over the last couple of years. It just, I don't know when you just settle in. And I think that hopefully with what you're saying there, and maybe Variable's the guy, maybe it just settles in, and eventually they just kind of build out that culture. I know the Raider culture was massive, and it got rocked, right? Yeah. So I
think that'd be a cool team to see have a bit of success, considering all the crap and their history as a team. That would be really cool to see. So I hope Vrabel goes there, and I hope Brady has a little bit of that pull where he can get some of those guys in there and change the culture here. Yeah. Not only that, because I want to see some teams in that division start giving Kansas City a bit of a trouble here, and not just letting them cakewalk to the Super Bowl every single year.
Yeah. But it is so reminiscent. Isn't it kind of funny? Like, that it's so eerily reminiscent of the AFC East. and the Patriots, and how they just walked that division for so many years.
Well, funny enough, we got Denver and the Chargers in the playoffs this year. When we did the pre-take, we're just like, unders. And then the Chargers was
I'm not sure if we did on the Chargers. We Chargers,
just
we
because
agreed.
they had the easy
Denver,
schedule, right?
Denver, we just didn't think that their offensive assets were even going to be remotely part of this, right? Like, I think, like we said, Jaleel McLaughlin might be their best player.
Yeah,
we're kidding.
exactly.
Obviously, we know there's more, but
Exactly.
a big deal there with that. But yeah, I would say Cortland Sutton, all those guys, they came around eventually.
Yeah, they definitely did.
Yeah, we'll cut that.
Jump back on there. But it's, I think they're coming. Obviously, you got Bo Nix going in with Denver.
Denver
and it's
absolutely
getting a little
looks
bit
like
better.
a force coming through. Like Bo is
relax. Relax. We played a backup Kansas City Chiefs team here. Okay,
Bo Nix has some talent, man. I can't wait to see what that develops into. I think that's like this draft class of quarterbacks has been incredible to watch develop. And honestly, just like I think you get a couple weapons that go in that guy's way. He's got the ability to run. He's got the ability to throw. He's got a good arm. There were some big plays in that game, obviously against your Bengals. That game went right toe to toe. So if you're telling me that the Bengals are, ready for that, if they got in, they could have gone, right? Well, they gave them a pretty good fight. So it's a good team. And we didn't give it as much credit in the preseason. And I think we just really overlooked what Bo Nix could be as well as what this defense was because they shut a lot of teams down. So
yeah. Sean Payton, and they did that with all Russ's dead cap attached to them as well. So like hats off to them. And it's gonna be cool to see them get better and add pieces to a team that's like we don't really know. They got Cortland Sutton, they got a mix of running backs back there. They don't really have like a standout offense yet. So once they start piecing this thing together, it's gonna be cool to see them. Same with the Chargers too. They're working on that as well. But another firing I wanted to talk about was the Jacksonville Jaguars and Doug Pederson being let go. And I was mentioning this to you yesterday where I saw LaShawn McCoy go on a bit of a rant about this. And he was talking about how Doug Pederson essentially had to obviously make up for the lack of quarterback play from Trevor Lawrence and obviously his injuries. And he made a comment on that too in his exit presser as well, or I think it was the end of the year presser that he did, saying that like it's tough to win games when your quarterback isn't healthy for majority of them, right? And that's kind of been Trevor Lawrence's. He's been in and out of the lineup. And not only that, but like I just haven't seen him be a standout quarterback yet either. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that, and then we can kind of expand on these.
Trevor Lawrence's show me money. I don't know when that happened. I don't know if he's got Jerry Maguire for a fucking agent at this point, but someone said show me the money and then they paid. Like I don't understand the stats. I think they've compared him. I can't remember what I was watching, but at one point I believe the stats coincide between Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence, and Daniel Jones just got cut. So like up until this point, they had similar seasons and stats, and then all of a sudden you're now telling me that this guy's as prolific and going to get paid $55 million a year. Like, and you had said it perfectly. I think, where have you won that dictates that cash? And yes, you were a top pick. Yes, you clearly have talent. And develop wise, like you just said, injuries have definitely played a part so far in his career, but I don't think enough to then warrant that contract. And I don't think enough to even get into that next phase where you're saying, hey, like, is this the coaching or is this the quarterback? I'm sure we'll get into this right now, but I don't really get what Trevor Lawrence has developed into yet. Like what can we call Trevor Lawrence in this league right now, if not for a mid to above average when playing really well? But if you've watched the Jacksonville Jaguars game, you've seen his arm. It's not very accurate. It like there was moments of great play, but that comes across a lot of quarterbacks in this league where they have a great. We just talked about Joe Milton, for God's sakes.
Greatness is consistency, right?
And it can be flashed, right? Like,
in this league.
And obviously
has flashes.
Trevor Lawrence, a huge college career. I don't think it's translated just yet, and it's yet to be seen. So I don't get your thoughts on that, but I haven't seen it enough to warrant that. I don't know. This whole situation is interesting.
I completely agree, and that just kind of building off of the comments by LaShawn McCoy here, it just goes back to, like, just because you're like next man up here, why does that warrant you being like the highest paid kind of thing? You know, like for such mediocre quarterback play, like, yeah, we get it. You had the history. Sure, is there potential there? Yeah, absolutely. But what happened to what happened to prove it, you know? Like, show me what you can do that's going to warrant the payday that you're going to get. I want to see you work for it. I want to see you show me why you deserve that paycheck. Like, why are we just handing it out? And then on the backside of this, it's these the coaches are suffering because of poor quarterback play. So someone's got to take the fall here, and you're not going to get rid of the quarterback you just paid $500 million or whatever the contract is, right? Like, it's not going to happen. So I feel like a lot of good coaches are just getting canned quickly because the quarterback is just not performing and the GM is the one paying them. It's just, it doesn't make sense, and I think it's really backwards right now. And then I was telling you on the flip side, like with Zach Taylor and the Bengals, you get great quarterback play, and that masks the deficiencies from the head coach. And he still has a job because of the fact that his quarterback is so good, and it covers up a lot of those holes. So it seems to be the narrative now. And it's like, if you don't have a good quarterback, you're kind of out of a job. But you look at what Mike Tomlin's done, and then we'll get to him and talking about the Pittsburgh Steelers too. But, you know, a great team isn't just going to be built solely off just the quarterback play. There's a lot of elements that go into it. Is a quarterback important? Absolutely it is. Most important piece for sure. But you got to have other pieces around it too, and you got to get them to perform. So I don't know if Pederson's necessarily the reason for how shit they've been, but it kind of is what it is with the way the league is going right now. It's just frustrating to see how we're just paying these players and they haven't really performed.
Yeah, no, it's wild. I just quickly brought up his stats because I was like, I know he was bad. He's on my fantasy team. I traded from this guy over here a couple years back. We won't get into details of that trade. It's wild. But fuck. And this season, obviously he's played hurt a little bit, but he had 5 of the 9 games not even throwing 200 yards.
Yeah.
Like, he's not necessarily that. Like, you compare these stats in the same contract that Joe Burrow just got.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were hurt. They were hurt too, to be fair, right? But
well, I mean, ETN fell off. Like, I don't know what happened there.
ETN fell off. Well, he was a little hurt, and then obviously
Brian Thomas put up record numbers.
Brian Thomas doesn't apparently need Trevor Lawrence. Mac Jones.
So he's a stud. Evan Ingram was a great tight end.
Evan Ingram
for a bit there.
But he was hurt. Yeah. Kirk,
I think
hurt. Right?
Yeah,
there were a lot of pieces that Jacksonville just like failed, you know, on that part. But like, he's just he hasn't shown it yet. Like, it just hasn't come through. Like, at all.
So it's that's a team that I'm going to keep eyes on. I'm interested to see what happens there because, man, I just haven't seen it from Trevor Lawrence. So who are you going to bring in? Who's going to get this team going? But I mean, if anything, that division at least is a little bit more, you know, wide open. There's no one that's like, we expected the Texans to be dominant. Didn't happen. So I think you have a little bit more ease in that division to be a better team and get back on the horse there. So.
I had Jags, for context, I had Jags going number 1 in this division.
Yeah.
So I mean, I'll eat that one. And what it is, because I thought Trevor Lawrence was going to take another step. He did have 2 seasons prior where they were pretty good. But kind of like building upon, you know, I thought last year he took a little step back. This year was a big step back given all the situation. But yeah, I don't know. We'll see it come through, but I think you're right. Doug Pederson, did he deserve it? I don't know. Again, it's just a culture thing and what you're going to look for as a foundation going forward. Not a big winning team this year by any means, obviously.
No. And then, okay, so we got a surprise. Giants retaining Brian Daboll and GM Joe Schoen. What? Excuse me?
Mara did not listen to the plane. Yeah.
Clearly he didn't listen to the plane. Mara, the people are telling you what you need to do here. After the Saquon Barkley thing, I don't know how the fuck this GM has a job. I do not understand.
Well, we understand it's the owner.
That, like, do you ever sit here and watch some of this shit play out, and it seems like such a simple thing from just an average viewer perspective even, and you're like, how the fuck, who talked you into the idea that, you know what, we're going to keep the guy that let this cornerstone player walk out the building and go put up record numbers with a division rival? I just don't know how you do that. Yeah. It blows my mind.
Yeah.
It blows my mind.
I don't have any words for that. Brian Daboll, I don't think necessarily.
That I'm not getting too overly,
but Schoen for
about.
Sure for the decisions that have been made and like, even doubling down and saying like, about the Daniel Jones situation, which is what it is. They clearly want to go out and get a quarterback here in the draft. I don't know. It's just like, we talked about putting your eggs in one basket here. So you're going to go in, put him in that situation, a situation that literally couldn't get Saquon where he needed to be. And now you're going to do that to your quarterback, your rookie quarterback that you're going to bring in this situation. I just don't get the plan. We talked about this a few pods ago. I don't get what the plan was then. I definitely don't get what it is now. Yeah, if you look at this in a couple years situation, did you buy 1 year? Like, did you know what I mean? Like, I just don't know we're just talking about how quick they are to judge. Well, we've judged and jury and executed on this one. Like, it's already done. There's not a lot here to figure out what the decisions were. Were they bad? Yes, they were. So, I don't know. This is wild. This one's wild to me.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. So we'll see what Joe does in the offseason here. I mean, is it Shedeur, Sanders these guys are going to take now?
Yeah.
I don't know if that's particularly the guy that you want to put all your eggs in one basket with. But desperate times call for desperate measures, so we'll see what happens there. Now we can kind of talk about some coordinators that got fired. We got Seahawks. They fired offensive coordinator Ben Grubb after one season. That's kind of interesting to me.
Why?
Like, was Seattle's offense, I mean, they're just so fucking inconsistent, though, right?
No,
I think that's what it was. They just never showed up sometimes.
I don't know. Kenneth Walker had an up and down season, but I don't know if you can
Injured
blame
all the
him
time.
for that.
But then Charbonnet was pretty good when he
Charbonnet was good. Like, I felt this offense was actually really fucking good. I was like, if you look at Geno Smith, he just got a $6 million bonus for being good. So I don't understand the concept of if you're there to develop and bring these guys to their incentives and get them over the hill there. Like DK Metcalf was hurt a couple weeks. Jackson Smith and Jigba, he took a step forward. Kenneth Walker, he was hurt a little bit, but like we just said, Charbonnet stepped forward. So all of your guys performed on offense, and then you go out and fire your offensive coordinator. I don't know, and I don't know if this is just petty for being petty, but if you go out and then get a $6 million bonus for a guy, does that like just some other play and bullshit coming on where it's like, thank you, Geno, for all your efforts, but maybe this guy's out the door. I don't know. Like it just seems so weird because it's a 10-7 team. Like
10-7. They also
so they got 10 wins.
Like they had JSN had a career year this year.
JSN had a career year.
JSN was going like I don't.
There's
know
nothing on this offense that tells me I don't know like that they weren't performing above potential. Like
there was
there's a couple games that I was like, what the fuck? Like
it's just like they showed up, they didn't show up. There's great flashes, and then they would disappear. Like they would disappear. Like against the 49ers.
Well, they went. What did they go 3-0 and then 3-3? Right? Like they definitely fell off and went
another gap.
Yeah, they went up and down throughout the season. Yeah, but collectively, if you still win 3 wins above 500, like What were your expectations? If he got in, would you have fired him? And that's where again, same concept. Like, what, I don't get what that is. So one ball went one different way in a different part of the division, and you fired your guy who this didn't make any sense to me at all.
And then we also had the Colts. They fired defensive coordinator Gus Bradley. Colts are a bit of a toss-up right now. You saw Pat McAfee. He left his suite open there at the end of the game. Saw one of the players went over and just like ghost handshaked his seating area there. And I was just laughing because Pat McAfee was chirping the Colts, and I get it, man. Like, they suck at winning games that fucking matter. Like, a couple years ago with Phillip Rivers going into Jacksonville, losing a game that would have got them in the playoffs, and then they keep losing, like, to the Giants. You can't lose these games, man, to bad teams like that. Yeah.
Well, they definitely say, and Pat McAfee, he was even saying about the culture in the room, right? Like, that culture in that room right now is not good.
Richardson too.
Anthony Richardson situations and what's happening there, like, it's not what we thought it was. Definitely at the beginning of the season, we thought this team with the coaching staff and everything that was coming together was going to be a powerhouse with the talent that they had, at least in the backfield and the offensive line. And that didn't happen. So when that, I guess, falls apart, the whole thing falls apart. So you can't put too much faith in that.
Yeah. What do you think about Anthony Richardson? Is he getting close to being done in this league?
No. I think give this time, and maybe it's just it sounds, if not for him changing his attitude and behavior towards things, like, I think that right now, like, let's look at this as a 1-for-1 with Bryce Young. Right? That decision to bench him, come through at the end, in the last 5 games of the season here for Carolina are a completely different team. If you take that same approach with Anthony Richardson, then to me, it's Anthony Richardson that is the problem, and not necessarily that other situation. So unless he figures that out, and that may just be laziness, that may be gifted beyond belief, but now it's caught up to you. And I think that's what we're seeing with that situation, because at the end of the day, Bryce Young, it's been well documented that he is, very ready to learn, listen, take his bumps, learn from them. And obviously in the last little bit here started to show, that's why this guy was picked, right? Like, I think, like, that last game for me, and now granted it was one of those, like, it's a whatever game, but I was kind of chuckling to myself because that showed it wasn't a whatever game for Tampa. Like, you know what I mean? Like, or was it Atlanta, right? And, like, that's the situation where you're like, I don't know. Like, what do you do in that situation? But if not to wait for it and see the player. Like, if the player comes back and learns from it, because they have the talent, then you got to let that ride, at least for a little bit, right? Like Johnny Manziel, all the talent in the world, didn't have the attitude, right? And that came around. So
I think everybody.
It didn't come around for him. He ended up CFL, XFL, whatever the fuck. Like, it got cast aside because it wasn't there.
Yeah, I hear that. That pretty much wraps up like the care. Is there anyone you really want to discuss aside from that? I think we covered most of it.
No, I think we got it all. I think the pettiness of the NFL is fucking great. So entertaining, man.
Man, it's a tough business to be in.
It's
right?
a show me league,
and everyone wants success right away. But
quick business. Yep.
The last one we didn't touch on. Cincinnati Bengals fired their defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. I'll give my 2 cents on this one. Not only that, but we fired our O-line coach Frank Pollack, defensive line coach Marion Hobby, and our linebacker coach. So pretty clean sweep. I think we're waiting on the secondary coaches, depending on what defensive coordinator comes in. But I will say this: I don't know if I understand our defense was putrid this year. It was really bad. Do I think Lou is a bad coach? I think the funny thing is he was probably one of the better coaches on the staff, I had thought. But I also understand that like a coach's message could wear thin. And maybe it just wasn't working the way that they needed it to with the team as a whole, right? But to me, and the funny thing was it was Zach Taylor that apparently made these decisions, which to me probably scares me the most because I come on this show and I talk about Zach Taylor all the time. And I don't think there's anybody in the league that says Zach Taylor's a good coach, or would even mention him.
Somebody has faith
in that light, right? Like that's where I'm confused as a whole. And then you got him staying there after some of the awful decisions that he's made all year, and just how this team hasn't been ready. I don't know what you see. All I know is this guy's fucking seat is as hot as ever. If there is I don't know how he's feeling right now, but the fact that he still has a job going into next season, there is no fucking area for failure. No area. You cannot go into another season wasting. We had the passing leader on offense in Joe Burrow. We had a Triple Crown winner in Jamar Chase this year, which isn't being talked about enough. And that's thanks to Zach Taylor because we didn't make the fucking playoffs. And then the defensive side of the ball, Trey Hendrickson was the sack leader this year, which is pretty remarkable. And it sucks because I see that stuff and you want to put these guys on the pedestal and you want to give them their flowers and you want them to be talked about. But unfortunately, that was taken away from us because we couldn't get into the playoffs, right? So I don't know.
Yeah, this still bothers me that Saquon is as favored in this discussion for Offensive Player of the Year because I don't understand it. I do find it funny. There was that clip that was circling around today with Orlovsky and Sharp, like who the quarterback or who the last receiver is to win the Triple Crown and not get it. Sterling
Orlovsky,
Sharp.
man. Orlovsky's the best.
Great clip. But no, it's the whole situation, the depth of field of the receiving teams and everything that comes with that position. It's the biggest position, right? Offensively in the NFL. And for an individual to lead all categories, the main categories for receiving, receptions, fucking yards and touchdowns is wild to me. That is utter dominance in a massive field of players in a specific position. And to discredit that, I understand the situation that is with Saquon Barkley and the dominance that was shown in this season with him. I get it. But to not have these guys closer together on this discussion, it's like if you can have Joe Burrow creep into this conversation for MVP and he understands that he's not going to win it given the context of the situation, but everything stats wise and everything pulling even back into this opportunity to get into the playoffs, if you can't say the same thing about the receiving side of the ball and what that meant to this team also making that run, I just don't fully understand what that is. Because it doesn't make any sense to me. If you're going to talk about offensive percentage of what Jamar Chase meant to this fucking team this year, and then you talk about Saquon, I'm sure they're a lot closer than what's being given right now.
Yeah, it doesn't make any fucking sense to me either. And I don't know how you can sit there and say that he is not the offensive player of the year. It doesn't make sense. Do you know how hard it is to win the Triple Crown in this league? Rushing for 2K is fucking great. But look at how dominant the running backs were this year as well.
4 times.
Yes, exactly.
4 times is the Triple Crown.
Jamar is
I think that's crazy.
24 years old too, and
in the Super Bowl era for those stats.
Yes, he also did this pretty handedly too. There weren't people within 50 yards of him,
like a country mile.
His receptions. He beat everybody handedly. And yeah, man, I'm scratching my head. And it's just frustrating to see that because I think they deserve a little bit more credit for this stuff. And it's just kind of getting whiffed and overlooked right now. And it's just because we're not in the postseason. I think if we're in the postseason.
Yeah, if you're in, it's a completely different discussion.
But when you got stats like that, man, with these players.
I don't get.
You're vying for like a 1 seed with this kind of roster. Like it blows me.
Well, what was it? It was 3 games within 1 score within the division, 2 with Baltimore, and then I can't remember the other team. But they if you win one of those games, it's a completely different scenario here, and I think that's the difference maker.
The funny thing I keep seeing today was that week 1 game at New England that we lost. It's like if that had just reversed, the Bengals would be in the playoffs, and New England would have the first overall pick.
So that is fucking hilarious. Incredible. That is incredible. Yeah, because I think we had joked about that. You're like, these guys are going to get steamrolled, and then fucking Patriots won, and I was like, what a perfect game for them to lose. And then obviously the next 2 following that didn't help anything either. But oh my God, that's so funny looking back at that. Yeah, what a changed tale to 2 seasons here.
Yeah,
that's sweet.
But okay, so let me ask you this. I want to get your thoughts here before we kind of move off this coaching carousel and the nonsense that's been going on. I want to know to you, out of the New England Patriots, the Jacksonville Jaguars, and the Las Vegas Raiders right now. I think there's a couple ones out there, but based off of those fresh firings right now, who do we got that's out there that also fired their coaches midseason? You have the Bears as well. And you had reported interest with those teams. I think the Cowboys actually just blocked Mike McCarthy. From being interviewed there. You have the Jets as well. Out of these different scenarios, what do you think is the best option currently for a head coaching job? Where would you go?
Has to be. I want to say it's a split between the Jaguars and the Bears. Like for me,
solely because of the quarterback situation?
I think the quarterback situation, the running back situation, and both also good. I don't think these teams are that far off. I think they had weird seasons. I think Caleb Williams takes a step if he can find a little maturity as well, now that he realizes that, it's not the easiest world, to live in the NFL. I think with a proper coach and proper direction, that can come around. The talent between those two are definitely the most raw of all of those situations, and you don't have to go find that. So between that and the running back situation, I know Etienne is on his option, and I don't know what happens there, but then you have a pretty good situation with Bigsby. A lot of these situations with Swift, same thing. Like there's good situations in Chicago and Jacksonville. It's like you have the receiving team there. We just talked about that. And they're going to get better with the picks that they get. So I think that's where you're going to take that. That would be where I would be most interested in going. I think those are the 2 standouts. Now, there's not that much more to be done to get better. And then if you're talking about how quick we are to fire these guys, I want to lean into the best situation that I think I can get into. If you're going to give me a couple years of a contract, I want to make the most out of that. Right?
Yeah. I would probably agree with you too, just based off of, the quarterback situation, the talent surrounding them. Like Jacksonville has good players on their roster too.
They do. It's a good team. Like it just fell apart. Like
Jacksonville's going to have a high draft pick too this year. Yep. Like these guys are going to come in, they're going to be able to draft somebody and go from there. Obviously, I talked about the Raiders. I want to see them do better. But when you talk about allure and like history and things like that, I do look at like New England having the history and the owner that they do, and then you look at the Raiders and the history they've had previously, and just them being in such.
You also got to get through that, right? Like you also have to then create your own narrative of history within that, and I think that's a challenge in itself.
See, so New England has a quarterback too, right? Like
they do. Yeah,
that's a good-looking job when you got Drake May, right? So and they got a high draft pick. They're going to draft probably some offensive weapon potentially, but they got a lot of holes to fill. But the thing that I think the biggest problem is just the lack of coaches to choose from. Yeah, like we talked about Vrabel. Ben Johnson from Detroit's going to be a huge one. But what is with Rex Ryan getting interviews with the Jets. You got Pete Carroll getting interviews with Chicago. How desperate are we getting?
Go
for
back to the
coaches
well,
now?
baby. Yeah.
What, like, if
Literally.
this league doesn't reek of desperation right now, I don't know what to tell you, man. Like, can we get some new guys in here, some new faces, some guys?
Well, I
from
think they're
college or
starting to
something
realize
like
that, like, the offensive coordinator situation across the league, where some of these guys were getting some looks, and obviously that
Didn't
might be
pan
there,
out.
right? But it's not panning out the way that they're anticipating.
They want
so
the old school coaches. who've had
hey, we
success
need
now.
something to
Ron
build the culture,
Rivera.
and
Dude.
that is respected, right? Like Ron Rivera is
Yeah.
one thing, but like you want to go down the list of Pete Carroll, right? Like that's a
you
well-known,
say
respected
respected.
player coach.
I've been watching Rex Ryan on this fucking panel just be an absolute joke the last couple of years. I'm like, there's no fucking way this guy's getting another head coaching position.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
It's just not happening, man. Guy's not serious. No way. He
No,
was
you know what's
mentioning
funny?
he's
Some of the
like-
clips from like Hard Knocks and things as well. It's like it's so funny to watch because it's like he's just like hard to take seriously. He's one
Yeah,
of those guys
I know.
that like even when he's talking straight to you and we're gonna run these fuckers down, you're like I don't know.
I'm good.
Are
I'm
we
good.
gonna do that? I
Yeah,
don't. And probably
think
the
so.
reason that they didn't as much as maybe they wanted to. So yeah, no, it's funny.
So that's what I'm looking for in the offseason is just where that's going to go because, like I said, just not a shit ton of coaches on the list here to pull from. So we'll see, man. Desperate times call for desperate measures. But another topic I want to get in here. I was watching and I saw some different stuff on this today. Coming out of Miami, we have a disgruntled Mr. Tyreek Hill, the cheetah. And I want to get your thoughts, and I want to give you mine on Mr. Tyreek Hill and his post-game interview that he gave out the other day. What'd you think of disgruntled Tyreek Hill there, saying he's done. He's done in Miami. We got to reevaluate what we're doing.
That
here.
had to be the funniest, like to watch that and see a guy go through the motions clearly in his head, right? That he's towing a line of what he's going to say in this moment between unfiltered and filtered. He's like trying to filter himself live.
Yeah.
Like you could see it
But
in
he just
his
can't.
eyes.
He couldn't control it.
You could
He's
see
like,
he was just like, I don't want to talk about this, but I want to talk about this. But I want to get the fuck out of here so I don't say something. But then, you know what? Fuck it. I'm out. I don't want to play here. I don't want to do this anymore.
I'm
And
gonna
just
reevaluate.
deuces on the thing, like reevaluate my situation. Like, I don't even know what he expects to get better in this situation. I think it's so funny. You're aging, right? Like, not to say that you're done, but like if you were, I just don't like the whole season fell apart for this guy when he got arrested in that situation.
that was week 1 too.
Everything happened after that, right? Like the whole situation that unfolded, and it just hasn't been good since. And I don't know. I was laughing the whole time I'm watching that. I'm like, this guy's literally trying to get his way out of this interview. He's like trying to constantly go to the right in the interview because he's just like, I just don't want to. I'm going to walk over here now because I want to say exactly what's on my mind. And then he did. I thought it was hilarious. What'd you think?
Dude, I fucking laughed at it because we already talked about. Well, I mentioned this at the start of the year, before the year even started. This fucking guy's going on, like it was like Kay Adams or some shit like that, interviewing him, just talking about like himself. He's the best, yada yada yada, all himself. And
MVP.
What did he do? He left the team that was winning to go chase a bag, and he was singing the praises of Mr. Tua over there. Tua is just as good as Mahomes. All that nonsense. So, sit your ass in Miami, Tyreek, and shut the fuck up because like this is wild, man. How you just can't have it every way you want, dude. And it's not even like he's performed this year. Yeah. Plenty of drop balls, even when Tua's been in there. Like he hasn't performed the way he has last year, right? Like just not the same output. You can't put this on anybody else. And for you to say I'm too much of a competitor, like, bro, you made your decision. You made your bed. You can sleep in it, right? Like, nah, man. You don't just get to bail out. And to do that postseason, last game, where your team's gone through everything.
Absolutely.
Bro,
And the
if
wild
I'm
part
a
to me
team-
was Mike McDaniel had no idea it had happened. And then he was just like, he was put on the spot to be like,
This
guess
guy
I
said
gotta
he wasn't
answer for
even
this.
available
Yeah.
in the game. He wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Like, and Mike's like, yeah, just straight up told me he wasn't available to play. Like,
Yeah.
bro, if I'm a guy building a roster in the offseason, you think I'm going, I want that dude on my team?
Yeah.
No fucking way, man.
Yeah, and then
This
on
guy's
top
a
of that,
clown.
the Antonio Brown shit with the picture.
And he changes
I was
his
like-
profile
I was like,
picture to
this,
that?
This is fucking awesome. The fact that that happened, and it's like you're owning it. You're owning your situation. You're
Yeah,
saying, "Yo, I
probably not
am
the
that
right thing to
guy.
do, buddy.
I'm." But like, bro, you're selling yourself. Like, it's
Yep.
at this point,
You're
like
31 years old, dude.
31.
Like,
You scored 4 touchdowns this season. Like. The comments on our one post are so wild, saying this guy had more kids this year than he had touchdowns.
he did
It's
touchdowns.
fucking awesome in so many ways, but it's true. Like, if you haven't shown up in this situation, you're an aging receiver in this league, and you got some drama and some bullshit clearly coming your way. Like, every team is gonna look at that and be like, "Run the fuck away, run away, cheetah." Like, it's just what it is. Like, I just don't get. I don't
who
get
the
this whole
fuck's-
situation.
Who's out here? Number one, he's under contract. This idiot got a raise for nothing in the offseason because he
Yeah.
wanted to be paid as high as some of these other guys. They paid him, right?
Yeah.
And then you got him pulling this shit end of the year, leaving your coach high and dry on the mic like that. And I just look at this, I'm like, bro, who in their right mind is going out there? They're going to be trading a second or a third. They're going to take on your cap hit and then deal with your shit. Like, man, no
Yeah.
thank you, bro. No thank you. Like,
No, and
that's
it was
wild.
and it was clear, right? Like that it was completely off the hook. Like that no one had any idea that this was going to happen, that this was just a decision that this guy made out of an emotional stance on what, I don't know. Like maybe it's a hint at what Tua's situation is and a little bit more depth, and maybe he just, what he believed is no longer a true thing that he wants to have as a person throwing
He
him the
stood
ball.
up there and backed him the
But
entire
you
time,
went
too.
and you said what you said about that situation, and now all of a sudden you're backing out. So like you're backing out 2 times. You're backing out on your quarterback. You're backing out on your team, and all that. Like you can't just say, "Oh, I'm going to flip the coin on this one," and yeah, you know what, I'm not feeling it anymore.
Yeah.
And then expect to be respected amongst the league. Like they're not going to be looking at that any different. Like Antonio Brown literally did the same shit, bounced around team to team until it was literally done and wraps because everyone was like too much of a fucking headache to deal with the
he's a
talent.
goof. And he was still talented too, right? Like,
Yeah.
he was still doing shit
Oh,
at
he's
the end
absolutely.
of his career, man.
The
Like, he
potential was there.
wicked receiver
This is
still.
one of the best receivers all time, right? And
Yeah.
then
And they're
to
like,
come
"Fuck that."
through and the same situation here where you're like, yo, this is one of the better receivers in the last little
Careful,
bit.
Tyreek. You're approaching AB territory here, buddy.
And
You might
that's-
want to settle
yeah.
down. But
Yeah.
the other thing that I saw today was they came out, they had a discussion with ownership, and the word was Tyreek does not want to trade. He did not request a trade. And I'm like, okay, the damage is done, guys. It's all right.
Yeah.
You can cover it up. That's cool.
Yeah.
But the damage is done here. So Dolphins are going to be one of those teams I'm going to watch in the offseason because, man, they're a dumpster fire of an organization. I just, fuck, I look at that team and I'm just like, man, no contention
go
for
pick
them
up
whatsoever.
Jalen Waddle for cheap, maybe, hopefully still in your dynasty leagues and your other leagues, and hope for the best. And just maybe you're getting a discount wide receiver 1. That's what I'm looking at. Like that's the only situation that makes
that
sense.
was the immediate headlines when you saw that. It's like, oh, stock up for Jalen Waddle here.
Yeah.
But that was a wild story. Wild way to end the year for the Dolphins, and that just sucks, man. They had a rocky season to begin with, and then you get Tyreek coming out here saying that shit. But
Yeah.
let's get into this final game of the season here, because that had the biggest letdown of the week with the Vikings and the Lions. And I don't want to sit here because we built up the Vikings all year and we were just like, man, like we're waiting for Darnold to turn into a pumpkin and we're like, oh, no, he's amazing. Like, look at this. He's going to be getting the bag at the end of the year. And lo and behold, he turned into a pumpkin. And
It's
it was
wild
pretty
that it
obvious.
took one game for the entire fan base to just go, oh fuck, like, and with that performance, I understand why. Like, it was abysmal. I think there's two parts to this. Like, Jetta was actually getting covered by Robertson. Amazing. Like, that whole fucking thing was like
Detroit's defense.
We talked about them getting cut up. Well, I think the story was that he had like covered him since high school, and he's like, I know how this guy works and moves and whatever,
or something like that.
And just like, I was like, that's incredible if that's the case, and obviously showed up. If you want to walk into a payday, you cover Justin Jefferson and make it happen down to 43 yards and fucking, well, I don't know, I think it was only 3 receptions or something like that. Like, that's what you do. And they're not speaking about the situation on the other side of how poorly he was getting open, and as well as the other team, because the passes were so bad. Like, everything that you saw was like, holy shit, this guy can't make a throw tonight. And I don't know I can't remember what it was, but we had joked about like pass attempts were there and it looked weird to us, and we're like, is this a line that we like? Like, why is Vegas favoring this line? Well, they were right on that, but completions, they were definitely wrong on that one, because he had just been atrocious. Like, it was just a terrible showing. It was Sam Darnold of old, and that was the unfortunate part. Like, and he was still making the right reads. That was the difference. I thought that the main difference there was he was still making the right reads, but he was just not executing on the passes.
I don't think he was. I think he was getting like trigger shy, man. Like, every time I had Jordan Addison on the over on receiving yards there, and there was multiple freeze frames that I saw afterwards where when I was watching the game, I'm like, he's wide open. Like, you need to stop double clutching the ball and second guessing these, because you got a guy wide open.
You got the yips halfway through. I saw the opposite.
Times I saw that, I'm like, holy fuck, dude! I was losing my mind, because this guy it was sailing high, or he just wasn't throwing the ball, and he's trying to hold on to it for like 5+ seconds. We're like, dude.
Yeah, he did hold on to it for
like
a while.
You took sacks all game because you just couldn't get the ball out, man.
They also have that ability. Like, their line has held up like all season long. Like, I think there was a couple things there, but like, I didn't think any of the reads, like, there was just bad throws. Like, as I'm watching this, and like Jetta in the end zone and a couple times, and like just bad throws, and I was like, that was the execution side of it, not necessarily the actual like read itself. The read was the right read, just didn't execute on it. So like you score twice in those situations. It's a much different game. So
and you know what the crazy thing here too is? Football is so unforgiving, man. It's so unforgiving, because you're going to have a wicked season from Sam Darnold, and he could go into this playoff game. They could potentially lose to, I think they play the Rams, right? They could potentially lose to the Rams, and the season's over. And then it's all you remember is the last 2 games from Sam Darnold, and the losses.
That is a tale of the Vikings story here.
Man. And then it's all it switches from, we're trading JJ McCarthy to like, hell no. JJ's our guy. Sam Darnold's going to free agency. It was great while it lasted, and it's just, to me, man, the NFL it's wild because of that.
Cutthroat business, man. That's all it comes down to.
And it's so week to week. It's crazy to me. So I don't know. We'll get into some of the playoff matchups quickly here too, and after this. But that's tough, man. It's tough to see, and I get that was a big moment for him against a good team in Detroit. So like, we'll see. It's all about rebounding. I always find like it doesn't matter. You can have a bad game. It's all about how you rebound in sports, and we're gonna get to see that. So on the other side of things, Detroit side, we talked about how well their defense played. We thought this game was going over everywhere. Turns out the only over was Jahmyr fucking Gibbs, who also finished the season as the RB1, which is fucking remarkable considering he's been splitting carries for like 14 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
That is insane to me. But he
RB1 in PPR, right?
Yes. Yeah. He put that on display, though, man. Yeah. Like, you saw when he got the ball in open space, dude.
Well, we were joking.
Insane.
So 127.5 was his rush rec for this last game.
Yeah, we were laughing.
I was like,
we're like, whoa,
holy shit, that's high. Like this, it hasn't been around that mark or that high in the last little bit here. And then I'm like, I'm not sure how I feel about that. We didn't end up taking it. This I think was like 18 and a half carries or 17 and a half was his carry line, and you're like, these are like incredible stats, but they do use him almost every fucking play. He doesn't really get a break. He does provide that dynamic kind of backfield in this situation, especially. Like it's him or not. And like, holy shit, just alone beat the game, like won the game for them. Like,
Yep.
Knuckles went supersonic, like, sorry, Gibbs went supersonic. Like, this guy
He
just
looks
went
fucking
incredible.
insane.
Yeah.
And he's going to win a lot of these games for Detroit. And I talked about this, man. Like, the rushing element, that offensive line with a weapon like Jahmyr Gibbs, and what you see the type of screens they give this guy, when he does that, like that halfback option screen out of the backfield, bro, good luck tackling him. Because that guy is a weapon. And the thing I keep seeing is, oh my God, yeah. I keep seeing their draft from that year, and it's
they got
Jahmyr Gibbs, Jack Campbell,
and they got Gripe
Sam
for the Gibbs
Laporta, and
pick.
Brian Branch.
Yeah,
I know that. But dude, look at the way these guys have turned out, and you could get whatever shit. Like, we could talk about the Michael Penix in Atlanta, right? Like, you could say whatever the fuck you want during the draft, this and that, but after the fact, everybody shuts up, nobody says anything, and you look at that stretch of draft picks and how that's translated, and that's the reason why Detroit is such a successful team. And then you look at a team like the Bengals, and they haven't drafted very well, and that's why they're in that position, right? Like, it is drafting, it is developing, and you're seeing that Detroit has talent everywhere, and man, they're going to be a tough team to beat in the playoffs here. I don't think anyone's going to be beating
offense.
them. Yeah. I don't
and
see
just
anybody
Goff, man. Like, Goff is not getting enough credit for the season that he's doing as well. Like, it's not that he is exactly what you need in this team, in just a stable quarterback doing doing what you need to do, making completions. Obviously, very accurate this season, but this whole situation with like the offense has just been so incredible this season. Like, we just talked about the defense last week, and then that happened, and it's like, okay, so if you even get a glimpse of good defense, this team's going to win every time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's a wild ending. Not as eventful and not as many points as we thought, but now we have our final seeds, and then we can kind of talk about, these matchups just a little grazing before we get into the preview here. But we got this weekend on Saturday, we got the Chargers, Texans, we got the Steelers, Ravens, and then on Sunday we got Broncos, Bills, Packers, Eagles, Commanders, Bucks, and then the Monday game being the Vikings, Rams. And obviously the two teams that have the byes, the Detroit Lions and the Kansas City Chiefs. Out of these games, obviously the Broncos snuck in there. Not exactly what Cincinnati was hoping for there at the end. Seems like the Chiefs were really, really trying to lose that game. Appreciate it, Chiefs. So Broncos sneak in there. Which one of these games kind of stands out?
So the one that you just mentioned, the Bills-Broncos, is the most interesting game here. Because I think if you put in the other team that we were just talking about and your team, if they did happen to make it, or this Broncos team, I think this Broncos team can put a little bit of, heat and pressure on the Bills right now to do some, miraculous things coming out of the woodwork. I think it's just one of those sneaky games that Bills, obviously, in their history in the divisional, has not been good, and especially over the last couple seasons here. I think you pair that up with the fact that obviously Bo Nix and what he can kind of do late in these games, and just like, I don't think the pressure is on the Broncos. Like, I just don't think that they're feeling any kind of heat at this particular. They're just not, and they've got into this position. They had to fight to get in. They've been on a little run as well, and I think that they're in a situation where they can maybe shock Bills fans everywhere and Bills Mafia, and I think that's what makes Bills fans the most nervous. Is, holy shit, yes, we got Josh Allen, maybe the MVP of the season, but fuck, we've lost in all these situations the last couple years, and it's gonna be one of those situations you look at and go, do you have the nerves to get through this, and is the monkey off your back, hopefully Josh Allen MVP potential can get that through the wire here. But holy shit, that's the game that I'm looking and going, I don't know. It's just it stands out to me like I don't know. I don't know about this Bills team finally coming through and making this happen.
I can see that, and look at the way I get that it was against a backup Chiefs team, but they look so fucking in sync. Sean Payton has this team playing well, and they played well against the Bengals. Like we talked about that game.
They played well against the Bengals. I don't look at the Chiefs game. That was
no, yeah. But hey, you look at the Bengals game. They're a good team. Are they great? Are they top? No, they're not. But you know what? They're scrappy, and like you said, they have nothing that they're playing free right now. Yeah, it's just go out there, have a good time. You got a rookie that made a quarterback with the amount of dead cap you got on that team. So I'm with you on that. I'll touch on kind of my quick take is going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Ravens there. I think before I don't want to get too much into the matchups, but you got we talked about the whole Mike Tomlin thing. The Steelers. I've been pretty stable with the way that I felt about him and that team, and obviously, it's kind of swung back in my way, in my favor there with the way Pittsburgh's been playing. But I think you got a team that's got their back against the wall, against a Ravens team that they know well and could match up very well against. And I don't see them getting annihilated like they did the last time they played each other.
No.
I just don't see that happening. So I think I'm looking forward to that game. But I don't want to talk too much about that because we're going to save the playoff preview show for you guys coming up in a couple days from now. We'll probably get that done on Thursday for you. Have that out on Friday. We're going to preview the entire playoffs. Me and Chappy here we're going to pick our playoff brackets. We'll see who ends up in the finals there. And we'll obviously have some prop bets we're looking at. The Joe Burrow one didn't exactly hit for us this week. Pittsburgh played a lot shittier than I anticipated. Completions hit, but absolutely. The completions over and the attempts under. We had the ball a lot more than I expected in that game, and unfortunately that didn't hit. But good week nonetheless. Bengals finished strong. Season's over now. But you know what? The NFL offseason is so much fun to me. Yeah. So much fun to me. So I'm getting ready for that. I'm excited, and I'm excited to watch some playoff football. So we'll have that show up for you guys. We appreciate you tuning in this week, and we'll be seeing who you guys are picking for the playoffs as well down the line. But Chappy, you got any parting words for the guys?
No, keep tuning in. We're only getting bigger and better at this, and just want to keep rolling this stuff out to you guys. And I honestly think it's going to be just so much better running into the playoffs here. We got stuff on the line. Can't wait to kind of look through those picks and pull them out. So I love to get the competitive nature going. So I think I might have the season line right now on the wins and the games that we've tracked. I know you had a good week last week, but I think I'm still slightly ahead.
Next year we got to do this proper and actually keep the running tally going for you guys so you can see. But sure, you can take that, Chappy. If that helps you sleep at night.
We'll see next week. I'm going to knock on wood right now and hope that I don't fuck this up.
Exactly. Don't jinx yourself. But appreciate you guys tuning in. We'll catch you guys on the next episode. It's the Chappy Bengals Podcast. See you guys later.
Easy.